Now that the ramifications of Donald Trump's felony conviction are setting in, the mischief is truly beginning in Maga world. They're saying it's rigged over and over again, coming up with the latest MAGA conspiracies. The most recent one, look, Justice Merchan had an obligation to inform the parties that there was an individual who was making posts on the New York court system's Facebook page claiming while the trial was taking place to have some connection to a juror as a family member. It should have been obvious by the individual's Facebook account, a self-professed shit poster whose avatar was a dead musician known for defecating on a stage, that this was a prank. The individual came out and admitted to it being a prank. It's a malicious and unlawful one, and I wouldn't even want to use the term prank to call it what it is. But nonetheless, Donald Trump's now posting mistrial, all of MAGA saying mistrial, 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 and they are now spreading that conspiracy despite the fact that the Midas editorial team and others were able to quickly debunk this. Nonetheless, in the interest of transparency, Justice Merchan did what he had to do, but we're living in different times, right? At the end of an election, we used to accept the results of a free and fair election. At the end of a trial, we used to always say that we respect a jury verdict. With MAGA, we are in different times, and we're seeing that play out right now. Speaking about being in different times, you also have MAGA Republican Jim Jordan immediately subpoenaing Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo. Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney; Matthew Colangelo, the special assistant district attorney who helped prosecute this case, subpoenaed them before Congress, saying, look, we just want to ask you to show up at our weaponization of the federal government to just ask you about how state prosecutors are trying to undermine Donald Trump, to which Alvin Bragg responded, look, as much as I appreciate your invitation, there's currently proceedings still taking place, but maybe tell me what it is that you want to actually talk about, and we'll get back to you when we get back to you. We have sovereign interests as a state, Jim Jordan. I'm not sure if you heard of it. It's a concept called states' rights and federalism. We'll educate you on that if you need some help. Also, Donald Trump requested that his lawyer, Todd Blanche, the living mannequin who just stands next to Donald Trump and scowls, or as I refer to him, kind of looks like the weatherman on the Anchorman movie. Trump asked that Todd Blanche babysit him when he has his first probation officer visit coming up soon. Justice Merchan granted that. We'll talk about all of that and more. Also want to talk about federal judge Eileen Cannon's just truly bizarre orders. I mean, we know she's doing everything she can, and she already has done everything she can to delay a very simple trial from taking place, a very serious trial involving Donald Trump's theft of our nuclear codes, of our classified information, of our war plans. We've seen the surveillance footage of Walt T. Nauta, Donald Trump's valet, literally moving the boxes that contain our nuclear secrets. This is some serious, serious stuff with such an unserious, no offense to clowns, clownish judge and Judge Eileen Cannon. She's inviting random people who submitted amicus briefs to show up for a hearing that's going to take place at the end of this month and give oral argument. So she's having just random non-parties show up and argue the case to her, which is not something that happens in courts, where the parties' lawyers argue, not like, hey, we're doing a party in Judge Eileen Cannon's courtroom. Who's coming? Pro-Trumpers, you're all invited in. So that's what she's doing over there. She's also moved the schedule around to hear like a day and a half to 2 days of Donald Trump's ridiculous arguments that special counsel Jack Smith was unlawfully appointed and the money that's been appropriated for the special counsel's office is unlawful, whereas she only devoted just a mere few hours for oral argument on special counsel Jack Smith's request to have a gag order on Donald Trump for his lies that when Trump claims that the FBI and DOJ have tried and are trying to assassinate them, which is causing death threats and potential acts of violence against our law enforcement. Hey, law and order, right? Law and order. Also, Steve Bannon, his bond has been revoked. He will be going to prison July 1st. We'll talk about that. He lost all of his appeals. And finally, a federal judge presiding over his case, Judge Nichols, who, by the way, is a Trump-appointed judge, ordered that Bannon go to jail on July 1st. Also, the Georgia Court of Appeals has issued an order pausing all proceedings in the Fulton County District Attorney criminal case until the appeal of the Superior Court's order denying the effort by Trump's lawyers and other defendants to get Fani Willis disqualified. That appeal will be heard by the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals is staying all proceedings until that's heard. So justice delayed, justice denied when it comes to the Georgia Court of Appeals and Judge Eileen Cannon's proceedings. But where justice is served, Michael Popok, you see how what MAGA is doing. Not we respect the verdict of the jury. It is let's attack the jury and come up with any conspiracy theories.
Hey, Ben. Yeah, we're the law and order party, except when our cult leader is the one that's at the opposite end of the law and the order. There's this new phrase that I despise called lawfare, which they've come up with because they think that the justice system has been weaponized against their one guy. We have another name for it. You and I and our audience call it justice. We call it law and order. We call it democracy. We don't call it warfare. There's no proof and there's no facts and there's no evidence to support that attorney generals, prosecutors, state and federal, the Department of Justice, the FBI, state judges, federal judges, appellate judges, or any of those parts, investigators are weaponized against Donald Trump. And so there's no such thing as lawfare. It's just a talking point on a palm card that the followers of Donald Trump like to use because they got nowhere else to go for a party that used to pride itself on law and order and on justice and criminal justice. Used to be one of their big talking points, except when their guy got indicted and convicted. I mean, this is what we're watching. And every week that you and I do the show, and Wednesdays when I do it with Karen, it's another example of our justice system operating despite tremendous attempts to destabilize it and undermine it and pressure testing by Donald Trump. And we're trying to tear away at the guardrails, but it's working. Bankruptcy courts are handling the liquidation of assets belonging to Rudy Giuliani and Alex Jones, the big denier of all, not election denier, but mass shootings in school denier. The criminal courts are handling the criminal cases, except for that big anomaly of Aileen Cannon that we're going to talk about, state and federal cases. Attorney generals are stepping up their game. Having now waited for the Department of Justice to bring their suits, are now stepping in and saying, we got to protect election integrity in our individual states. And now we've got at least two of the attorney generals there doing that. Civil courts are doing their thing. E. Jean Carroll awarded running with interest on a meter that's going to approach $100 million for defamation, for being a sex assault victim of Donald Trump, and probably going to be a likely plaintiff against Donald Trump again. And appellate courts, state and federal, I'll leave the Supreme Court out for a moment, are doing their part to rein in Donald Trump's reign of terror, criminality, and kleptocracy, which he threatens to restore if he gets back into office. You and I have talked about it at length. I did a hot take on it. The first thing he is going to do, as all fascists do, is going to be to dismantle the independence of the Department of Justice. It's not, you know how I know he's going to do that? Because he says it out loud. It's not something, I'm not interpreting it. I'm just listening. And I'm comprehending what he is saying. And he's made it clear that he is going to weaponize the Department of Justice to go after his political enemies, starting, he says, with the Biden crime family, which, talk about a projection moment, he says is the greatest crime family the world has ever known. I doubt that's possible or true. So he's already got this Project 2025 that you and I have talked about in other hot takes, and we'll do it one day here too, in which he's got a shadow government in think tanks and institutes that are all MAGA right wing, and he's ready to bring back into office along with him people that have either been indicted or convicted or lost their law licenses or all coming back. It's old home week at the White House. He's going to be bringing all these people back, Peter Navarro and Michael Flynn and Rudy Giuliani. And I posited this on a hot take, Ben, before I kick it back to you. There is nothing that requires that the Attorney General be a licensed lawyer. How about this? Attorney General Rudy Giuliani under Trump administration. And if that sends a chill down your spine, then let me connect it to something we're going to talk about today. Associate Supreme Court Justice Aileen Cannon. And if you don't think that's possible, then you're not watching, and you're not watching him as his lips move about what he's going to do. There is, and I'm not saying this in order to say there's a boogeyman under the bed. It's not a boogeyman. There's an up and running series of institutes and think tanks devoted to in this Project 2025, devoted to installing in all of the cabinet positions and all of the lawyer positions within government sycophants of Donald Trump that'll do his bidding as he weaponizes the government and destroys the independence of the Department of Justice. Merrick Garland gets a lot of grief, and usually rightly so, including criticism on this network and from us. However, you can't challenge that he's not independent. We think sometimes he's too independent, and also in his use of the special counsel position. But at least we have an independent Department of Justice inside of the executive branch. Say goodbye to that if Donald Trump somehow finds a way to be restored to power.
So one of the motivations for Judge Aileen Cannon even inviting these third-party groups, two separate pro-Trump groups, one relating to the actual group Citizens United, is that this is part of her audition to become a Supreme Court justice. And what she wants to show Donald Trump is the types of things that she will do for him that have never been done before. You don't invite random people into your federal courtroom to give random oral arguments just because. And she's inviting these groups to ultimately, I think, back her when she believes she'll be selected in a Trump administration, if that were to ever happen. And let's hope it doesn't happen, and work to make sure it doesn't happen by putting out the truth out there, that she'll have the support of groups like that to try to push her through. I mean, that's why I think she's doing it. And Michael Popok, you talk about our system working. And I would just, with this caveat, and you and I think both agree with this, and I think it was implicit in what you were saying, prosecutors, juries, we the people are stepping up, and that part of it is working. Where it's actually not working is with right-wing Supreme Court justices who are stopping the jury process, who are stopping the justice system, who are not making rulings, right? We haven't heard the Supreme Court rule on any of the major cases yet. They've paused the proceedings in Washington, D.C. They're entertaining the concept of kings and monarchs, that a president and former president can be actually above the law and have complete immunity from crimes. The mere fact that they're entertaining that when the very foundation of our country was built on a rejection to that premise. That's why our country was created. Like, what are you talking about? Monarchs were absolute immune. We, the people, created a system where no one is above the law. In Georgia, you've got the Republican Court of Appeals that's dominated there, that's pausing and stopping those proceedings there, despite the fact that a Republican appointed judge ruled against Trump. And then in Florida, you have a Trump appointee. So if you want to see where the justice system is intentionally malfunctioning and combusting, it is through what the MAGA Republicans have done to it and what they want to do to it. The jury system works. The jury system should be respected. They want to stop that system from happening. Popok, let's talk, though, just so you see, this is what Trump's been sending out, and there's emails like this every day. He's saying, Join Trump's war council. I need you on my war council. Biden and the deep state have declared all out war against me. Here's another one there. They opened fire on MAGA. End the witch hunt. This is from a radical left war machine. Those are the messages that they're sending when it's no. No, you had sex with a porn star. You falsified business records when you made hush money payments. You lied about it. It's a crime. It's a crime that's prosecuted in New York, not infrequently. A jury found you guilty. That's what went down. Washington, D.C., you led an insurrection. You tried to overthrow our democracy. We saw it. We know what went down. Other people have pled guilty already in Georgia for the criminal conduct as being part of that, because your own lawyers have pled guilty in connection with their role. And we all saw what went down there. You stole classified records. You stole our nuclear codes. And your argument isn't, I didn't steal the nuclear codes. Your argument, this is what his main argument is, that he's put in his court filings, that he's allowed to do it because when he was in office, if you're a president or former president, by putting them in boxes and shipping them to your homes, they automatically become your own personal property. That's his argument, that then our nuclear codes, they actually belong to him. And he has a whole political party. The Republicans are like, yeah, those are his personal nuclear codes. And we're all sitting here in the Law and Order Legal AF community. What do you mean those are his nuclear codes? Those aren't his nuclear codes. Those aren't his war plans. It's not Obama's war plans. It's not Clinton's war. It's not George W. Bush. That doesn't belong to them. They are temporary holders of an office where they take an oath to protect our democracy. What are you talking about? It's not lawfare. We know what happened. Here's the latest from the New York trial. This is where I said this reminds, very reminiscent, Popok, of the election, right? They throw out everything to try to discredit it. The event happens, they lose, and then they go into the next tier, which is that it's all rigged. You come up with your conspiracies, your 2,000 mules, or whatever the heck it's called. And that, by the way, there was a retraction there like 3 years later from Salem saying that, yes, we lied about that. This is all false. Too little, too late, as that's being used and everything. But this is just the jury verdict version of the election, right? This is what they do. And now you'll have 1,000 conspiracies. Everything's rigged. Everything's one big plot. So Justice Merchan posted, today the court became aware of a comment. This was posted on Friday. That was posted on the Unified Court System's public Facebook page, which I now bring to your attention. In the comment, the user, Michael Anderson, states, my cousin is a juror and says Trump is getting convicted. Thank you, folks, for all your hard work. The comment, now labeled as 1 week old, responded to a routine UCS notice posted on May 29, 2024, regarding oral arguments in the 4th Department of the Appellate Division unrelated to this proceeding. The posting, entitled the Appellate Division, 4th Department, will hear oral arguments the morning at 10. So just a random post, had nothing to do with this case, on the New York court system's website. Michael Anderson, if that's probably not even the name of the person, posted that. You see the post right there. The photo of like Michael Anderson is Gigi Allen, who's the deceased musician who like defecated on stage. And so the whole thing is a ruse and a prank. And then this account said, yes, it's a prank. I'm a shit poster. The account says I'm a professional shit poster, and then the person goes, take it easy. Let's just pull that up. Take it easy. I'm a professional shit poster. In internet culture, shit posting or trash posting is the act of using an online forum or social media page to post content that is of aggressive, ironically, and trollishly poor quality. We identified like dozens of other times where this individual had made posts like this before, but nonetheless, this is what MAGA is using right now and saying mistrial, it was rigged. Look, some rando said, and by the way, it'd be one thing if Cat Turd, this right-wing influencer account, was just like some random account. This is the most influential Republican account, one of the most influential Republican influencer accounts. Then all the other Republicans start posting it, and Fox starts posting it, and then Donald Trump at like 1:30 a.m. in the morning posts mistrial. And so this is what they're running with now, that quite literally some internet troll made a random post, or a random internet troll made a malicious post on the New York website. And so they're going with that now. And the thing, Popok, is in normal times, we'd all just be like, this is ridiculous, and then move on. Like, that's how this would normally go down. We're in a different time where, look, Justice Merchan did the right thing by bringing that to people's attention, so we wouldn't be accused of, like, what if that was being planted by MAGA, so Justice Merchan does not bring it up, and then they use the fact that Merchan doesn't tell the parties as a way to try to get a mistrial. So Merchan did his job, but now you have all of the MAGAs saying, look, it's rigged. Some random person made that post. Who, damn the facts, full speed ahead. Popok, what do you make of this?
Oh, there's a lot there to unpack, and things that we'll continue to talk about this segment in the New York trial. I took a couple of notes while you were doing your analysis. One, the posting by Donald Trump where he said, "They made me a convicted felon." Think about the sentence structure there. They made me a convicted felon, as opposed to, I was found guilty for my criminal conduct by a impartial and fair jury in New York, after a 2-year process and a 6-week trial. I love that. The other one, we posted the cat turd. Not only is that an influential MAGA, whatever it is, it's actually got a blue check mark from X, this is the world that we live in now. I don't even think I have a blue check. Maybe I have a blue check mark, but I think that's amazing. The jury hoax thing has to be taken seriously by Judge Merchan, as you just said. This is not ripped out of the movie plots. Just a week ago, in a federal case involving the theft of COVID funds totaling $50 million, a juror during jury deliberation had a $125,000 bribe delivered to their house in cash. And the judge there had to deal with that. So jury influence and jury tampering is not just things of Hollywood creation. It happens. It just happened in a federal case. P.S. on that, the judge figured out a way to separate the jury, protect the jury, let them complete their deliberations, and all 5 defendants were convicted. But this happens, and it's not up to Judge Merchan and his team, who are already fending off with the Department of Public Safety in New York death threats, which have escalated. That's the thing we haven't talked about here. We've talked about it, but just not at this moment. This lawfare, rigged mistrial is also followed by right-wing, not even dark web comments: hang the judge, assassinate the judge, kill the judge and his family and everybody associated with it, because that goes on in the echo chamber of MAGA, because that's disgusting. And that just rips the mask off that they are a legitimate political First Amendment party. They are not. They have pinned their hopes and dreams of anybody that is legitimate within the Republican Party to this MAGA wing that is a violent cult. And every week it's like flavor of the week. Last week it was Merchan gave the wrong jury instructions because he allowed the jury to pick like a Chinese menu from column A or column B about which crime was being facilitated by the business record fraud. No, he gave an appropriate business record fraud in furtherance of a second crime instruction to the jury under New York law, where I practice, and it will be upheld. And I'm just, for those that cross over and watch our episodes, I'm telling you straight here, listen to me. Come to the light. Okay. It is going to be upheld by all appellate courts in New York. I saw a poll, Ben, that 55 or 60% of MAGA thought there was no way Donald Trump was going to be convicted. And they were shocked when he was, because they're not following the trial the way we are in our audiences. They're not using their critical lens the way we are. They don't know about the evidence that's being presented. They don't know what the jury is receiving in terms of information and analysis. And instead, they rely on Donald Trump saying, I was convicted by a rigged election, a kangaroo court. The jury wouldn't even smile at me. Right. Because you're not liked. B, your lawyers were acting out in court on a regular basis at your instruction, and your defenses were ridiculous. And that's why the jury, who was charged to do their civic duty, which is what they did. We all want to live in a world where there's a defense, even one as strange as Donald Trump's, and there is a jury, and it's public, and there is a result. You may not like the result, but you accept the result. Just as you said frequently on this network and during our own podcast, we were prepared to accept the result of the jury. Right? We had a lot of nervous energy and hearts in our throats waiting when we heard the jury hit the buzzer twice. The verdict is in. We were like, oh shit. Not because we thought the fix was in. All right, let's do that. If the fix was in and this was rigged, right? And we're pro-democracy, so we're on the other side of MAGA. Why would we have been upset? We would have been popping champagne as soon as we heard the two buzzers, because we would have been like, of course, here comes the guilty verdict. That's not what we were feeling. All the lawyers on this network, including those that are contributors to Legal AF, were like, oh crap, I wonder what's going to happen here, because, there is some great evidence that was presented, and I think it's beyond a reasonable doubt, but I'm not the jury. And the jury's going to have to make their decision. So when the jury verdict came in, it was a relief because we thought justice was done. But if the jury came back and said, listen, mistrial, hung jury, and/or he's exonerated, we'd be like, okay, it's not exactly what we wanted, but we accept outcomes of our legitimate institutions in America, no matter what they are. The judge did the right thing on the whole hoax thing. The gag order, to pick up there, is still in play, as you and I talked about in right after the conviction came out. All the conditions of release are still in play because he hasn't been sentenced yet. And the appeal process is also part of the criminal justice system. And the judge is responsible for fairly administering the justice system. Blanche, the human mannequin that she referred to, he writes a letter along with his colleague, his associate, and they, by the way, conspicuously absent is Susan Necklace, who practices law regularly in New York and apparently does not want to have anything to do with this. This reminds me when Joe Tacopina used to let Alina Habba file everything that he didn't believe in. Whenever you and I would see a Alina Habba filing without Joe Tacopina, we knew this was going to be complete and utter bullshit. And it was going to be rejected quickly. Same thing here. No Susan Necklace. She didn't even CC'd. Susan Necklace, the co-trial counsel, not even CC'd on this. So Blanche and Emile Beauvais, his associate, write in and say to the judge, it's over. He lost. We think he should have won, but he lost. And we think he should be sentenced to probation. But in the meantime, he has a First Amendment right, and he gets to go out there, and he's got a debate coming up on the 27th of June, and you got to remove all of this. The trial's over. And the prosecutors write in to the judge and say, what are they talking about? There's still the administration of justice that needs to be preserved by you. That's the focus of the gag order. Nothing's changed. It's gotten worse. And now the judge is going to set that briefing schedule and have that hearing or make a ruling on it. But I believe he's going to keep most of this gag order in place, especially when he is the subject, despite all this, he's the subject of tremendous violent rhetoric against himself, his staff, and others. And Donald Trump has shown that he has, as Mershon once said in the courtroom, a no self-restraint. And so he can't trust him to do the right thing. So he has to regulate. We still have the criminal contempt proceedings that are not yet concluded. The judge hasn't made his rulings about all those things, how he's going to find him in contempt, whether he's going to find him in contempt, and all of that. So all of that is still in the mix. And lastly, before I kick it back to you, I thought the judge bent over backwards on the probation interview that has to happen. For those so we don't talk in complete shorthand here, have a little Patreon breakout session. The sentencing, whether state or federal, requires that there be a independent department. It's usually probation or pretrial services, depending upon which system you're in, that prepares a report to the judge. Usually has a range of sentences that may be recommended. In federal, it's off the federal sentencing guidelines. In state, it's like, all right, here's the 8,000 false record cases. This is how many people got sentences. This is the range of their sentences, just so the judge has that information. And then details about the individual who just got convicted, including his mental health. That's going to be an interesting interview. His social media, again, and his finances. Not great right now. Have you ever been convicted of, have you ever have been adjudged to have committed fraud? Yes. How much do you owe? $465 million. Have you ever had a case against you related to violent sexual crime? Yes. How did that go? Not well. $100 million judgment that I haven't paid yet. This is the type of, it's not, we're New Yorkers, so we sort of know Trump, but they still got to check the box and ask the questions. So the judge is allowing, unlike in most cases, is allowing Blanche, the lawyer, to go in to this interview. I don't think it changes the outcome, but it'll give Blanche the opportunity to go out and, I guess, complain about it, and Trump to complain about it. But there's going to be a report, and the prosecutors are going to prepare a report, and the defense can prepare a report. But the ultimate arbiter for deciding what happens on July the 11th for the sentence, whether it's probation or no punishment at all on one end of the extreme, or up to 20 years in jail on the other, is somebody named Juan Merchan, who is the only judge with broad discretion to set this sentence. Now, once he sets the sentence, if it has any kind of jail time component to it, whether he defers having him report for his sentence until after an appeal process, which is sort of likely. So I don't think he goes in before the November election, even if he is sentenced to jail time. And all of those factors, that whole thing, the conviction by the jury, the decisions made by the judge within his discretion in administrating the jury process, and the rules, the decisions he made about evidence, and the decisions he made about all sorts of motion practice during this thing, along with the sentence, goes together in whatever appeal Donald Trump is going to take first to the court, the First Department Appellate Division, New York, first stop on the train, and then Court of Appeals. And then lastly, there is no Supreme Court here, U.S. Supreme Court here for Donald Trump. There's no writ of habeas corpus to jump over. It's just a garden variety fraud conviction, as you'll talk about when I kick it back to you on Jim Jordan. This is a garden variety, a convicted felon for business record fraud in New York. It has nothing to do with the federal process, constitutional law, or Congress.
Popok, I really enjoyed your legal lecture, Criminal Sentencing 101 on Patreon. That's patreon.com/legalaf. If you ever wanted to sit in on a lecture from Professor Popok or myself, I'm currently off this summer, and I'm taking off for the fall from USC Law, but I'll resume teaching back again next September. I wanted to be here, of course, for the election and some other things I'll be sharing with people as well. Go to patreon.com/legalaf. One more time, patreon.com/legalaf. It also helps support the growth of this show, and you'll get to sit in on some of those lectures. Check that out. Let's take a first quick break of the show.
Proper sleep can increase focus, boost energy, and improve your mood. Introducing Beam's Dream Powder, a science-backed healthy hot cocoa for sleep. If you know me, you know that Dream has been a game changer for my sleep, and boy, do I need sleep these days. I drink Beam's Dream Powder each night in order to get my optimal sleep. And I gotta say, I wouldn't be recommending this if it didn't actually help me. And today, my listeners get a special discount on Beam's Dream Powder. Their science-backed healthy hot cocoa for sleep with no added sugar. Better sleep has never tasted better. Now available in delicious flavors like chocolate peanut butter, cinnamon cocoa, and sea salt caramel, with only 15 calories and 0 grams of sugar. Other sleep aids can cause next-day grogginess, but Dream contains a powerful all-natural blend of reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, melatonin, and nano CBD to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. The numbers don't lie. In a clinical study, 93% of participants reported Dream helped them get better sleep Beam Dream is easy to add to your nighttime routine. Just mix Dream into hot water or milk froth and enjoy before bed. Find out why Forbes and the New York Times are all talking about Beam and why it's trusted by the world's top athletes and business professionals. If you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, get up to 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/legalaf and use code legalaf at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/legalaf and use code legalaf for up to 40% off. It's hot outside and your nighttime bedroom temperature has a huge impact on your sleep quality. If you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Using silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, no matter the weather. So you get better sleep every night. These sheets are infused with silver that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresh 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands, and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Bacteria can clog your pores, causing breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo code LegalAF at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf and use the code LegalAF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/legalaf to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode.
As I always like to say, those aren't ad reads when Michael Popok delivers them. They are experiences. And
I'm very excited for our sponsors. I'm very excited for our pro-democracy sponsors.
If you want to support those pro-democracy sponsors, the discount codes are in the description below. During that ad break, Michael, I was just reflecting on what that sentencing memo is going to look like from the prosecutors, from pointing out Donald Trump. It'll be the most devastating sentencing memorandum like ever submitted, short of like a murder case. I mean, it'll certainly be the most devastating sentencing memorandum ever in a white collar kind of falsification case, where you go through the background of an individual. Have they been found criminally? Have they been found criminally responsible in other settings? Yes. The Trump organization has been determined to be a felon. Donald Trump leads that. Have they been determined to be a fraudulent enterprise or a fraud? Yes. Donald Trump was just found liable for civil fraud. To your point, Michael, was he found liable for sexual assault or any violent types of crimes like that? Well, he was found liable, at least in a civil case, for sexual assault and for defamation. How is he showing any form of remorse, taking accountability? Absolutely not. What's he doing? Sending out messages about people joining the war council and attacking the judge's daughter. I mean, they're going to show in that sentencing memo hundreds of examples where Donald Trump's attacked the judge's daughter, attacked the prosecutors, and they're going to not just talk about the trial. They're going to talk about before the indictment, right around when the indictment was handed down, when Donald Trump took the baseball bat to
That's
Alvin
a very
Braggs'
good
head
point.
in the photo.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but all that stuff, Ben, that Donald Trump feared would come into the courtroom if he testified, including all of the cross-examination material that the judge said that the prosecutors could use if Donald Trump took the stand, may not have been fair game to be introduced to the jury without Donald Trump's testimony. But the probation department will, as you just outlined, will be able to use all of that against him. As you outlined all of that, I I thought about it. It's like an NBA star. He just fills up all the boxes. I mean, his stats are just outstanding. There's not, I mean, you're like you said, we can't wait to get our hands on this report. We should be able to.
I would not be surprised if Donald Trump refuses to answer the questions. And I think part of having Todd Blanche show up that way is to refuse to answer the standard questions that everybody has to answer at an interview like that. You'll replay this episode, and we're going to call it here first. I would say that he's not going to respond to most of the questions, and he's going to try to pull some stunt there. That's why he wants Blanche there. Nothing that he does is in good faith. And then when he gets a significant sentence, and one of the factors is going to be his failure to cooperate with the probation department in their interview, then all of MAGA is going to come back and they're going to go, oh, it's rigged and it was unfair. Watch for that stunt that they're going to pull. He's very, very, very predictable. Let's just talking briefly though about what Jim Jordan and the MAGA Republicans in the House of Representatives are trying to do. They've been trying to interfere with all of the various prosecutions by first requesting an interview and then trying to subpoena all of the different prosecutors, whether it's at the federal level or it's the state level. Look, the jurisdiction of Congress is based on their enumerated federal powers within the House of Representatives. So the only hook for them to possibly have jurisdiction over a state prosecutor is if a state prosecutor, one, does something that interferes with the procedures or protocols of the federal government, or through the spending power of the federal government. So if federal money was appropriated to a state prosecutor, that could be used as a hook to try to explore the relationship between state funds and how a prosecutors using those funds, state prosecutors using those funds. One of the MAGA conspiracies out there is one of the members of the prosecution team, Matthew Colangelo, used to work for the Department of Justice, was a top person at the DOJ, left that job to be a prosecutor on the Manhattan District Attorney's team. And so Merrick Garland must have ordered Matthew Colangelo to be a part of that team, when in reality, what seems to have happened is an accomplished lawyer, Matthew Colangelo, a law and order guy, just wanted a different job. And he wanted to be in a job, like we all have different reasons for being in jobs, where you can a job could be more fulfilling. You can try to find your kind of your what you think is kind of your highest purpose, or more money, whatever the reason is. Someone's allowed to change jobs and move jobs. So it's not uncommon that a prosecutor works in different places. And so Matthew Colangelo wanted to work in the Manhattan District Attorney's office. He probably wanted to work there because he wanted to be involved in this case. And he said, I'm a good lawyer, and this is a case I want to be a part of, and I want to use my skill set there, right? I mean, not everything is the MAGA conspiracies that, Merrick Garland ordered it. So they want to have Matthew Colangelo come in as well and testify before the House of Representatives. And I thought the response from Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg was just pitch perfect, because if you just say no or you don't respond, the next move would be that Jim Jordan would have the Judiciary Committee institute a lawsuit and try to compel it. And the record would look like Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's not even trying to cooperate at all, and he's in kind of bad faith. And so what you have to kind of do when you respond to these things is you have to engage at least in like a little bit of a good faith dialogue. So Jim Jordan, obviously acting in bad faith, sends the request that Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo show up at this like ridiculously named hearing that like only MAGA could come up with. I mean, just if you take a look at even like the name of what the hearing is, it just goes to show you like how MAGA and Jim Jordan like actually view justice. So if you look at what they're calling it, they're saying it's the hearing in Rayburn. The hearing will examine actions by state and local prosecutors to engage in politically motivated prosecutions of federal officials, in particular, the federal prosecutions of President Donald Trump. I think that just goes to show you how they view the justice system, right? Rather than just give the hearing a generic title and they want to engage in fact finding and just find what the evidence is, they've already called the hearing the outcome, right? They've already basically said, we found you responsible and that you've acted inappropriately. Now come into our hearing. And again, that's what they want to turn our justice. That's what they want to turn our justice system into. And so Alvin Bragg responded and was just like, look, I'm happy to engage in a constructive dialogue with you. In fact, there may be a circumstance where we show up and not at that hearing, but we can provide you with information. Give us more info what you're actually looking for here. And then, of course, while appeals are pending and while sentencing hasn't taken place, we can't meet with you before then. There are active proceedings taking. So that's not going to happen anytime soon, but I thought it was a good response. But the broader point, though, was I think also when you see how they're labeling the hearing, that's their view of justice. Not let's let a jury decide. No, Jim Jordan, James Comer, Matt Gaetz, Donald Trump will give you the outcome, show up, and then they will start yelling at you and then say, aha, there's the outcome.
Right. And to two of your points there, this is round two of Jordan v. Bragg. They already had a fight 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, over a subpoena process related to Donald Trump and the original investigation where they wanted to bring in Mark Pomerantz, who was the special prosecutor that Alvin Bragg's predecessor, Cy Vance, had appointed to look into Stormy Daniels and Donald Trump and all things Donald Trump, who noisily exited. We won't bore everybody with the details again, but there's a book out there, People versus Donald Trump, Mark Pomerantz's fevered dream of how he would have prosecuted him if he woke up one day and was the Manhattan DA, which he wasn't. But of course, that gave fuel, oxygen to Maga and to Jordan and to Comer, and they wanted to bring Mark Pomerantz in, and they subpoenaed him, and then there was this whole fight, and then finally Alvin Bragg decided to resolve it similarly to the way he's resolving it now. Like, you want a piece of me? You want to talk to me? You can talk to me. And I think that'll go about as well as when recently, because MAGA got sort of full of themselves and what they were able to do with some presidents of some major universities about the protests that have been going on campus. A number of them lost their jobs over the way they answered questions to people like Elise Stefanik. They tried it again with public school leaders, and they got, no pun intended, the MAGA got schooled by the school administrators, including the superintendent of schools for New York, who's sort of like in the same, cut from the same cloth as Alvin Bragg in terms of, being a New Yorker and knowing what he's doing in his area of expertise. And I think I would pay and buy popcorn and give everybody popcorn to watch Alvin Bragg, who's really amazing and super smart and down to earth and sophisticated, yet humble, yet is able to communicate and eviscerate. He's a prosecutor. Every job he's ever had, he's been some sort of state or federal prosecutor. And people follow Alvin Bragg. Alvin Bragg spent a very short amount of time in the state prosecutor's office. His main prosecutorial chops were made on the federal side and working for the Attorney General of the state of New York. He's held all the jobs. He's had all the positions. That's why he's so supremely qualified, and the New Yorkers voted him in. So people like Matt Colangelo following Alvin Bragg and wanting to be a part of his talented squadron of elite litigators and trial lawyers for justice in New York is no surprise, because Alvin Bragg will attract that kind of talent to come work with him, especially people that had federal background the way that Alvin Bragg did. On the, I love your comments. It's so perfect about the titling, the labeling of these things, which is already the conclusion that they want to reach. We're going to talk a little bit later about Aileen Cannon allowing all this amicus brief people, three different ones, two pro-Trumpers, and of course, just to show that she's fair and balanced, one that supports the Department of Justice's position about whether this interesting notion, only interesting to Aileen Cannon, about whether the special counsel was properly appointed or funded. Like, what are you even? Well, we'll get there. I don't want to jump the gun on it, but there, they at least one of the people that wrote an amicus brief that's going to be able to argue appeared in front of another Jim Jordan special, which was the weaponization of the department. It's the title. Not we're looking into the Department of Justice, the weaponization of the Department of Justice, and how it's being used improperly against Republicans. Like, I thought you're holding a hearing to determine if there has been weaponization, not that you're starting from the conclusion and then only allowing people in to reinforce your foregone conclusion. I mean, you're right. Talk about kangaroo court. Can you imagine if out in front, the equivalent would be that if you went to the wooden door in front of Judge Merchan's courtroom, and instead of listing people versus Donald J. Trump, starting at 8 a.m., 9:30 a.m., whatever, in this courtroom, instead it said the anticipated conviction of Donald Trump for 34 counts of felonies starting today at 9 a.m. That would be the equivalent, and everybody would be like, "Oh my God!" Now that's a kangaroo court. Not what you and I do for a living, what we were trained to do for a living, and what we're watching here. So, when and if we see Alvin Bragg or anybody else, Michelangelo, show up in Congress, it will be a mismatch, but the other way. The cat is the New York prosecutors. The mouse will be the Maga leaders of these phony committees.
Couldn't agree more with you there, Popok. Want to remind everyone, patreon.com/legalaf is the destination if you want to get those really geeky, very nerdy Michael Popok legal lecture. Very Popok legal lecture. If you want to geek out with Professor Popok or myself, go to patreon.com/legalaf. It also really helps build this platform. We don't have outside investors, so we rely on those pro-democracy sponsors who we appreciate, and that Patreon is some of the main ways that we're able to grow this. Patreon.com/legalaf. Go check it out right now. And let's hear from some of those pro-democracy sponsors, eh?
Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored advice to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then, Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game, because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does. Optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, etc. It can also track your cycle and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through hormonal shifts, so you can keep up your energy and stave off cravings. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/legalaf to get 15% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/legalaf for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. How much do you think you're paying in subscriptions every month? The answer is probably more than you think. Over 74% of people have subscriptions they've forgotten about. I definitely did. Like the time I forgot about that I subscribed to Paramount Plus. But thanks to Rocket Money, I'm no longer wasting money on the ones I forgot about. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. With Rocket Money, I have full control over my subscriptions and a clear view of my expenses. I can see all of my subscriptions in one place. And if I see something I don't want, Rocket Money can help me cancel it with a few taps. I love how the dashboard shows me this month's spending compared to last month, so I can clearly see my spending habits. Plus, they'll help me create a custom budget and keep my spending on track. Rocket Money will even try to negotiate lower bills for you by up to 20%. All you got to do is submit a picture of your bill, and Rocket Money takes care of the rest. They'll deal with customer service for you. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's features. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/legalaf. That's rocketmoney.com/legalaf. rocketmoney.com/legalaf.
Thank you to our pro-democracy sponsors right there. Popok taking a little cheap shot at Paramount Plus, which you discovered with Rocket Money over there. And I hear you, but I do like how they help you find those subscriptions that you don't even know that you had, because I had a few of those, and I was like, all right, that's a problem. Anyway,
I like Paramount Plus, though. I don't know why I said that one in particular. It's probably one of the list of things that I got rid of.
Well, you know what? Sometimes we gotta consolidate it. I absolutely get it. All right, talk about we've talked about it at the outset of the show, so let's just touch on it briefly here. Judge Eileen Cannon, in another bizarre paperless order, inviting 2 pro-Trump groups and then one group that's just upholding what the law is on this issue about the appointment of special counsel Jack Smith. I've called it like a tinfoil hat kind of argument that Donald Trump's making here, because this has been decided over and over again in many other courts. It's a legal issue. It doesn't require a hearing. And in fact, it's a legal issue that a judge sua sponte on their own initiative should just rule on and just say, no, I'm rejecting it out of hand right away. Trump argues that special counsel Jack Smith's appointment was unlawful, claiming that Jack Smith, because he's not a technical officer, cannot have been selected through the Department of Justice process and selected by Merrick Garland, that it required Senate confirmation. And as a result, the entire criminal case is against Donald Trump is unlawful and needs to be dismissed. And also, because special counsel Jack Smith was not Senate confirmed, the appropriations, the funds that go to the DOJ that then go to pay for special counsel Jack Smith are improper and unlawful. And as a result, the entire case against Donald Trump should be dismissed. That's Trump's argument. Judge Eileen Cannon, rather than just dismissing it, is holding a day and a half of oral argument at the end of June on that issue. And then she's saying that she's going to be holding half a day to address Jack Smith's request that the conditions of Trump's release be expanded to prevent him from lying that he's currently the victim of attempted assassination attempts by the Department of Justice and the FBI, and that he was the victim of an assassination attempt during the Mar-a-Lago search, simply because one of the documents turned over in discovery in the Mar-a-Lago criminal case was the standard use of force policy that exists in every single search warrant that gets executed across the country. But Trump says, look, lethal force. It uses the words lethal force, and as a result, they tried to kill me. They're coming after me. They're trying to kill me. It's the most ridiculous argument in the world. It's not even an argument. It's just yet another one of the it's rigged, whining. They're trying to kill me. Join my war. It's just his kind of loser whining attack on our justice system types of stuff. But look, Judge Eileen Cannon's entertaining it. She's already done enough stuff to kick the trial out indefinitely, so there's not going to be the trial before her. There's really nothing Jack Smith can do right now because there's no final order. I mean, yes, you could potentially seek a writ with the 11th Circuit, but it's the path to doing that would likely result in Jack Smith not prevailing because there's not a final order. And if Jack Smith loses before the 11th Circuit, that loss will forever prevent him from removing Judge Eileen Cannon. Because once you lose there, you're not going to be credible if you attempt to do it again. So, he's waiting patiently for a final order. And, and look, I know there are people who are saying, look, Judge Eileen Cannon she's outmaneuvered and outplayed Jack Smith. That's like saying an umpire who calls a ball when it's a strike has outmaneuvered the batter. I mean, the judge, the umpire, you're supposed to call balls and strikes. And so it's not like the batter's being outmaneuvered per se. She's not following the law. But once again, we see another example where the norms and the good faith and our system is based on the idea that federal judges are accomplished, smart, intelligent people. And yes, they may have a little political bent, but they have life-term appointments. They're supposed to put that aside. And when they wear that robe, they're supposed to understand the august nature of their responsibilities. And not with Judge Eileen Cannon. That would be a massive understatement. And federal judges have discretion over their scheduling. You can't reverse them moving things around like that. And the lesson that she learned when she was reversed by the 11th Circuit the first time is, if I never make a ruling, I'll never get reversed. Mm-hmm. So let me just turn my courtroom into a circus. I'll get the support from the MAGA lawyers. In fact, let me invite the MAGA lawyers in for a party in my courtroom. We could all have an argument together. They'll get my back. And that's where she's going with this. Popok, what do you make of it? I mean, I know we talked a lot about this. What do you make of it?
Yeah, no, I'll just throw my 2 cents in there quickly. First of all, there's been recent reporting of about a dozen or so fellow members of the Southern District of Florida, which I am also a member in the courts there, who've come forward and have said anonymously that Judge Cannon usually bends over backwards against defendants in her courtroom. She is notorious, as far as they're concerned, for we kind of call it the hobgoblins of little minds. She gets very over her skis about minute issues. She loses the forest from the trees. This is in her other cases. She has very little experience when it comes to trial. She was an appellate lawyer for the Department of Justice, if you can believe it. Never was a frontline prosecutor trying cases. Tried very few cases before she got this case because of COVID. Almost none in her courtroom, and certainly none about the Espionage Act and obstruction of justice about a former president. And so her normal instincts to side with the prosecutors has gone out the window. And the only thing you can use to explain that is she's not only a member of the Federalist Society, she's gone to these Federalist Society boot camps at universities like the Antonin Scalia Law School that's run effectively by Leonard Leo, who founded the Federalist Society and hosts people like Eileen Cannon. She's gone there during the course of this prosecution, and so I'm sorry, you can only conclude that since she's not doing her normal thing, which is being harsh on defendants, is because, as you said earlier, this seems to be an elaborate tryout for higher office for Eileen Cannon. There's no other way to explain it. And you were kind to her. You said she was reversed once. She was reversed twice before the indictment even came out about her handling of the case. And you're right. She learned all the wrong lessons about how to avoid reversible orders. And the things that she finds interesting are not really interesting at all, because they've already been decided over and over again, both expressly by other appellate courts, other trial courts in the federal system, and even implicitly by the United States Supreme Court, that the special counsel, which replaced, just to do a little historical thing for a minute, prior to the special counsel, there was a thing called the independent counsel. It was a statute. It was created by Congress. It was bipartisan, and it was used. Ken Starr was the independent counsel prosecuting, investigating Bill Clinton and Whitewater and Monica Lewinsky. And Larry Walsh was the independent counsel investigating Reagan for Iran-Contra. That was the Oliver North thing there. And after both of those investigations, the Republicans and the Democrats at the time said, we hate the independent counsel office, and they scrapped the law. They let it lapse and they didn't renew it. It got replaced by what we call the special counsel, even though he is also independent. It's different than that independent counsel thing that I just described. And it is also a animal, a creature of being created by Congress and funded by Congress. And it has rules and regulations about what the attorney general can and can't do, and how he has to report to Congress ultimately about the ultimate reports and all of that. It's all regulated by Congress. The funding for it is regulated about how it comes out of it and all of that. Aileen Cannon hears there was a Supreme Court case about funding, about a bureau of the government, which was the Consumer Protection Bureau, and even the Maga was okay with how the Consumer Protection Bureau was funded by Congress. But she immediately wrote a paperless order and said, I would like everybody prepared to comment about this new precedent about funding and a bureau and how it may relate to the special counsel. Like, what are you even talking about? At this point, she's already done the thing that she wanted to do. She's taken this trial off the docket for the American people. They are not going to have the benefit of a exoneration or a conviction of Trump on these issues about, as you said, Espionage Act, stealing America's national defense information and top secret documents, classified documents by a former president. We are not going to have the benefit of that information, that data set, before the November 5th election. She's already done that. The rest of this is just rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic at this point. Well, let's use the 23rd for a hearing with a gag order about putting FBI at risk. It's an important issue, but this case has already hit the iceberg and is sinking fast. And unfortunately, Jack Smith, despite all of his brain power and all of his acumen, seems to be has been flummoxed. And there's there's been a little bit of acting out by a frustrated Department of Justice, even in her courtroom, where they're rightly so, banging on the table and arguing, and to the point where the judge was like, calm down, just calm down. Well, it's not about that. As my mother would say, when two kids are fighting over the bicycle, it's not about the bike. And the acting out by the prosecutors in the courtroom is not about whatever's going on at that particular moment. It's that they are flummoxed and frustrated by watching her make a mockery of our justice system. And, I don't know what's going on in the minds of the chief judge for the 11th Circuit. I don't know what's going on in the minds of the chief judge of the Southern District of Florida, but they can't be happy with what this is doing, and for the reputation of what was once proud federal district court, of which I proudly called myself a member on the attorney side, of what this is doing in the annals of history about this, how this case was handled by this young, inexperienced Federalist Society Trumper. That's all I can say.
Look, I know how important it was for you when early on I was calling out Judge Aileen Cannon, and you would push back on me, not against Judge Cannon, but you would say, hey, look, Ben, what we really have to be very careful about, though, is this Southern District of Florida has such a proud tradition. And you say, I'm a member of that bar. I mean, we have to believe that she's going to rise to the occasion and recognize the august judges on a bipartisan basis who she sits with and looks around, and the reputation of that courtroom must mean something to her. Like let's just see, and it wasn't coming from naivety. I think it was coming from your love of law and order, and to watch you have to go through the journey of coming to this conclusion that, this is a rogue and corrupt judge, where you vocalize it now in the way you do, notwithstanding the fact that you practice there, and how hard it is for you to have to do that for practicing in front of that court for so long. It's kind of like a sad, I don't feel sad for you. It's
right,
like it's like a sad thing to see.
It is.
That institution be so tarnished, and then our country be so tarnished by these MAGA judges. Look, justice delayed, justice denied. We see that in Georgia as well, where the Republican-controlled Court of Appeals there also issued a stay. They're going to be hearing the appeal of the ruling by the Fulton County Superior Court Judge McAfee, where he denied the effort by Trump's lawyers and others to disqualify Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis because she had an adult, consensual, short relationship with somebody in her office where there was zero evidence that came out that interfered in any way with the proceedings. All they focused on was the salacious nature of where they went and did they have sex and when was the first time they had sex, not whether it actually interfered at all with the prosecution. Judge McAfee said, I don't like that relationship took place, which I was like, who are you to say you don't like? Donald Trump's committed sexual assault. Like, you don't like it? People have relationships at work all the time. What do you mean you don't like it? So, but he's like, I'm not going to, do anything to this case so long as, the guy leaves the case and whatever. But I'm not going to disqualify her. So Trump appeals that on an emergency basis. A female black district attorney had sex with somebody in her office. This is the emergency. Not that I stole classified documents or nuclear codes or tried to overthrow the results of a free and fair election. No. A black female prosecutor had the audacity to have a short, adult, loving, consensual relationship with someone in her office. Let's go to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals go, we need to hear this. Not only do we need to hear this, stop the proceedings, stay it. This is so serious. And the anger I'm channeling there is how outrageous this is. And it does show when we want to talk about the different tiers of justice and the way things are. That's the issue. What are you talking about? You want me to go through? Should we go through, Michael Popok, the private lives of all of the white male prosecutors out there, other white prosecutors, see who they're screwing, see who they're dating, let's go through their text messages. Let's see what they do in their private life. Let's go into their bedrooms and then let's overturn all of their process. What are you talking about? That's not the way our justice system works. There was a hearing that should never have even taken place to begin with. And the fact that this is even getting there, frankly, I blame Judge McAfee for even entertaining this ridiculous thing to begin with. But you have the hearing that focuses on all these ridiculous, salacious details, people's private lives, their private life. People have relationships with people like that all the time. But because it's a black female prosecutor, that's what that's about. And now it's an emergency issue that we need to stop the prosecution of Donald Trump in Georgia until the appeals court can go, okay, so tell me, when was the first sex act that took place? Michael Popok.
Yeah, well, you laid it out great. I mean, you're right. This was completely invited by McAfee. I mean, it was a Pyrrhic victory for Fani Willis. It should not have gone the way it did. And the way that another inexperienced judge who was only on the bench for 6 months, and Scott McAfee, who we held so much hope for, even though he was a Republican appointee, just based on his background and his track record and the way he was making some initial rulings. But then when it came to the moment of truth, when he had to handle a very sensitive issue about allegations, and that's all they were, raised against a black female prosecutor in Fulton County, Georgia, he fumbled the ball. There's no other way to put it. And you and I said from the beginning, and joined by Karen Freeman-Kniflo, our colleague, so this is not the way you handle a hearing like that. You start with having the lawyers at best make a proffer of what they think the evidence would show, and then show the case law and have a whole academic debate and legal debate about whether under the case law, even if the proffered facts were true, whether that would meet the standard to disqualify the prosecutor or show that there was forensic misconduct, which is a term of art in Georgia, or whether there was any kind of financial misdealings that somehow impugn the integrity of the criminal justice process. That's what you do. And then you make a decision. And if only after then, that's the gatekeeping function the judge should have done, especially given what Fawdy Willis was being accused of and by whom. Instead of doing that, he went right to evidentiary hearing. Let's have 4 days of people speculating about the sex life and what goes on in the bedroom of Fawdy Willis and somebody that she worked with. And now we're off and running. And then the invitation that McAfee made to the Trump side, Mike Roman and Donald Trump and the 6 others that have now appealed, was the way he wrote his decision, which was really disgusting and almost misogynist in his own way and insulting to Fawdy Willis. And he used the term that will now go down in the annals of history the wrong way, which was the odor of mendacity hangs over this case. And I can't get to the bottom of exactly who's lying, but I didn't really like what Fawdy Willis said. I didn't like what Nathan Wade said. And so there's an odor of mendacity. Aha! The odor of mendacity, Steve Sadow said for Donald Trump, and takes his appeal, certified by this Judge McAfee. And now it's been assigned to 3 right-wing. Can we put the photo back up? This photo will speak 1,000 words without me saying much. Okay. All right. Tell me the result based on this photo of what this appellate court is going to do in the hinterland of Georgia, in the more Marjorie Taylor Greene section of Georgia than Atlanta. That's where these 3 judges are from, or from that area. And they found it so interesting that as I was doing my hot take about it, where I said Trump is going to ask for a stay and he's likely to get it, they already on their own granted the stay of everything in the case. And so there will be no trial. The trial that we held so much hope for, and the prosecutor too, from the very beginning, as we were trying to follow this horse race, Alvin Bragg, Fawdy Willis, Jack Smith, and we were like, that's one of the benefits of you and I covering with Karen on a real-time basis developments at the intersection of law and politics, is that at any given moment, if you pulled, as we said before, if you pulled one of our episodes, you'll see, we think Fawdy Willis is going to be the first one. Even though she was the second to indict, she'll be the first to trial. And then, wait, Alvin Bragg's case, here we go. Alvin was the first to indict. Now he pulls into the lead about halfway through this. But no, Jack Smith, Mar-a-Lago is the easier case. It'll be Jack Smith in the Mar-a-Lago case going first. I feel like I'm calling the Kentucky Derby. But at the end, it was Alvin Bragg, first to indict, broke the glass ceiling, giving permission and license to other prosecutors to say, you can prosecute Donald Trump successfully. And then you had Fawdy Willis, and then you had, of course, Jack Smith a couple of times. But now the case we held up so much hope for a year and a half ago, and the prosecutor, her reputation is improperly in tatters. Although not to the people of Fulton County, where she won overwhelmingly by 30 points in her primary recently for re-election. So they've circled the wagons around Fawdy Willis, and she will be reelected as the Fulton County District Attorney, people's choice for that position. But her reputation, because of the way Judge McAfee handled it, has taken a hit. Now, fortunately, I'll leave it on this. If Mike Roman, who led the charge with his lawyer against Fawdy Willis, thought he was out of the woods, and yay, there's not going to be a prosecution of me in Georgia before the election, the attorney generals, as I said at the top of my piece, the attorney generals are stepping in to do their thing. And they've indicted Mike Roman again in Wisconsin, related to his being one of the coordinators of and implementers of the fake elector scheme led by Donald Trump, because he was the election day coordinator for Donald Trump. And more importantly, to continue to use vocabulary on this particular show, he was the mule who was the mule for the certificates to try to get them into the hands of Mike Pence. So this is, again, we are watching, I guess back to my horse race analogy, people should take comfort that we have so many checks and balances and overlapping aspects of our justice system, the attorney generals who have criminal powers, the local prosecutors and district attorneys in the state side, the federal prosecutors, the inspector generals, the various court systems. And while somebody like Trump may wriggle free from one of these, or get a delayed or a justice denied thing somewhere, somebody else is going to step forward. This is exactly what we saw in New York. when Trump skated by and his Department of Justice didn't, of course, prosecute or investigate Donald Trump about the Stormy Daniels thing and went after Michael Cohen instead, the Manhattan District Attorney, who at the time was Cy Vance, as soon as they were done, said, now it's time for our office to take a look at what happened in our state about crimes here by this particular individual. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, even though I had a moment here when I got, as you saw, disappointed, a little choked up about what's going down in Florida, I do have a lot of confidence, and I want to telegraph that to our audience, about the overall American justice system, as we've described here time and time again, and its ability to, as just like a jury, to get it right ultimately. We might have to be patient. We kept talking about, when you and I founded the show, the wheels of justice are gigantic, and they move slow, but they grind very fine. And that this is, again, another series of examples that you and I have talked about on this podcast.
Well, here's what we told everybody a year ago. We said by June of 2024 that Donald Trump would almost certainly be a convicted felon, and he would have about $500 million in judgments against him. Go back, look at some of the Legal AF episodes, and multiple Legal AF episodes. He'd be a convicted felon, and there would be about $500 million of judgments against him. Now, that's taken place. And I think a lot of people said that would never happen. He's a convicted felon, and he's got over $500 million judgments against him. But now the MAGA Republican Party moves the goalpost. They don't like the jury system anymore. They don't like our election system. They don't like the jury system. Now everything is rigged. Everything is a hoax. And we know they said that before. But again, the links are uncanny between their response to the election loss and now that he's a convicted felon. They don't respect the jury process anymore. Everything is rigged in their own mind. I want to share this one moment, though, too, because I think this proves that point. And it also ties into Bannon being ordered to prison on July 1st, which is I think a great way also to end the show with justice being served there as well. Donald Trump's kind of MAGA Svengali, Steve Bannon, who only worked for 9 months in the Trump administration and then was a podcaster, and then he refused to show up to the January 6th committee in response to their subpoena, and then belatedly claimed that he should have executive immunity as a podcaster, which makes absolutely no sense at all. He was convicted by a jury of his peers. He appealed and delayed and did every Trumpian tactic to delay this thing. Ultimately, all of those delays backfired, because now that he's lost all of his appeals, a federal judge, Judge Nichols, who's following the law, Trump appointee who's following the law. So I just wanted to say that not everyone's like a Judge Eileen Cannon. So although I have some issues with Judge Nichols' ruling on the issue of obstruction of official proceeding, where Judge Nichols said he was the original judge to dismiss a case and said it was not obstruction of official proceeding if it didn't involve paperwork. That case is before the Supreme Court right now, which has impact on all of the other insurrectionist cases. But we'll set that aside just for the moment until we get a ruling from the Supreme Court there. But Judge Nichols ordered Bannon to jail or to prison. Bannon will start a 4-month sentence beginning July 1st. His bond has been revoked, and he has to report on July 1st. But all of the delays that Bannon did backfired, because now Bannon's likely going to be incarcerated during the kind of 4 months leading up to the election, where Bannon would have wanted to work the most mischief. He just would have served his prison sentence. He'd be out now. But now he's going to be there during kind of the key moments where he would normally work all of his mischief that he did in 2020, which is why he was being subpoenaed in the first place to the January 6th committee. So he ended up screwing himself there. And then in September, there is the trial for the We Build the Wall scam that he engaged in, where he was pardoned by Donald Trump at the federal level, where Trump said he was going to build the wall. He didn't, but they did do a GoFundMe. And then the feds, Donald Trump's Department of Justice, may I add, arrested Steve Bannon when he was on the yacht of Miles Guo, who's now been indicted. Miles Guo was the big funder of all right-wing media He was charged with $1 billion fraud scheme, not to be confused with the Epoch Times, where their CFO was just charged with a massive money laundering scheme. One of the other big MAGA right-wing media is another criminal indictment there with their other media. I know a lot of indictments happening because a lot of crimes are happening. Bannon was on the yacht of Miles Guo. He was arrested at the federal level for the We Build the Wall scam, where they said this GoFundMe was used to basically fund lavish personal stuff of Bannon and the other founders of the GoFundMe, and not actually to, build the wall with the private funds. Trump pardoned Bannon. Then Bannon was charged in New York. He'll be before Justice Merchan in September. But in the meantime, Bannon will be serving in prison for 4 months starting July 1st. But I want to show you this audio here. What did the January 6th committee want to talk to Bannon about? Well, Bannon, remember Miles Guo, who I just mentioned, who's been indicted for $1 billion fraud, used the money to fund right-wing media, used it to help fund Bannon and other people like that. Miles Guo held an event with his group. Seems kind of more like a cult, but his group in October. And October of 2020, Bannon spoke before that group. Bannon didn't know it was being recorded, but at that event, Bannon said, here's our plan for the 2020 election. No matter what the results are, even if Trump's down, we're going to say it's rigged, and we're going to say we won, and we're going to cause all of this chaos and basically launch a coup. I want to play this because it was played at the January 6th committee. This is Bannon's own words about what the plan was: to lie and say everything is rigged. Here, let's play this clip.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voters. That quote came to mind last week when audio from Trump advisor Steve Bannon surfaced from October 31st, 2020, just a few days before the presidential election. Let's listen.
And what Trump's going to do is just declare victory, right? He's going to declare victory. But that doesn't mean he's the winner. He's just going to say he's the winner.
The Democrats, more of our people vote early that count. Theirs voted mail. And so they're going to have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's going to take advantage of it. That's our strategy. He's going to declare himself a winner. So when you wake up Wednesday morning, it's going to be a firestorm. Also, if Trump is losing by 10 or 11 o'clock at night, it's going to be even crazier. No, because he's going to sit right there and say they stole it. If Biden's winning, Trump is going to do some crazy shit.
And of course, 4 days later, President Trump declared victory when his own campaign advisors told him he had absolutely no basis to do so. What the new Steve Bannon audio demonstrates is that Donald Trump's plan to falsely claim victory in 2020, no matter what the facts actually were, was premeditated. Perhaps worse, Donald Trump believed he could convince his voters to buy it, whether he had any actual evidence of fraud or not.
And now we're in this interesting period in American history where I agree with Liz Cheney. Right, where I'm in agreement with Adam Kinzinger, where people with very different political beliefs, but who fundamentally agree with law and order, can set aside certain political views and differences for the importance of preserving, protecting, and defending our Constitution. When you hear Steve Bannon say, we are going to lie if Biden is up, our plan is we're going to say it's rigged and Trump's going to do a bunch of crazy shit even if Biden's up. Watch. He's saying that to a room of Miles Guo's crew, and Miles Guo, indicted now, someone who's been indicted for $1 billion fraud. That's not, to me, Popok. I'll let you kind of give the final analysis of the show. This isn't a Democrat Republican thing. I mean, it really saddens me to think that that's what one of our major political parties now that's gone full MAGA, that's what they want. This is what we saw with the Ba'ath Party, with Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi. It's what we see with Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin. It's what we see in authoritarian regimes in the past and in the future. And President Biden made a post recently where he's talked about democracy being hard. And he says that when he was on the beaches of Normandy, commemorating the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And it's hard. And I think that's why lots of people looked at America like, how do you hold this together, right? I mean, it's based on a lot of good faith. The Constitution's not all that long. When I teach, there's another plug for patreon.com/legalaf. When I teach, I always say, look, the collective bargaining agreements in sports leagues are thousands of pages more than the Constitution, which is a very small document. So how does that small document hold everything together? And it's based on good faith and norms and the way things were, and political parties not saying elections are rigged like that takes place in a lot of other countries. And now here, the saddest part about it, but this is what motivates me every day, is to see a whole major party and a whole cross section of our country, or a whole section of our country, that's given up on it, that doesn't want that wants this weirdo wannabe authoritarian to dictate our freedoms, to take them away, and to lie and to gaslight us and to abuse us and to treat us like crap and to be in this abusive, oligarchical, authoritarian shithole. That's what they want to create. And I'm like, I want to be a part of. What are you talking about, Popok?
I feel your pain, as Bill Clinton used to say. When they asked Ben Franklin in the streets in Philadelphia about what form of government had been created by the founding fathers in Independence Hall, he said, Dr. Franklin, what's the government? What's the form of government? A new country coming off of the despotism of King George. He said, it's a constitutional republic if you can keep it. And there was a lot at the time. I'm not sure the guy on the street that heard that from him understood what that meant, but we understand what that means. It's hard work to keep a democracy in place. And if you look at the evolution of democratic countries, unfortunately, in democracy 4.0 or 5.0 or whatever we're in, sometimes at the fork in the road, it goes towards fascism, depending upon the totalitarian instincts of the other party. There's a reason, I'm not sure I totally agree with it, but there's a reason that Mexico has a strict one-term president limit. Some people think, well, AMLO was a great president for Mexico. Look what he did for the economy. Look what he did for the people. Look what he did for independence. One term, and it's on purpose. It's because of what happened after the Mexican Revolution and what they wanted to make sure would happen again, in having somebody get into power and they wouldn't be able to get him out. And yes, we have 2 terms, although we have a presidential candidate who doesn't even respect that part of our Constitution, because he doesn't respect the Constitution and thinks it's just a piece of paper that can be suspended and stretched and molded to his will. And that's why you hear Donald Trump talking about massing the American military on the border in violation of the Posse Comitatus law, because he will suspend the Constitution and invoke martial law or the Insurrection Act or anything else that Jeff Clark, who could potentially be the Attorney General, whatever comes out of his fevered mind will be implemented. And it's not hyperbole that you and I talk about here. And it's not to scare the crap out of our particular audience, because we know where their pro-democracy instincts lie. Instead, if we can ever break through, and we know from people that have contacted us, people we've met on the street, and just our overall understanding of the demographics of our audience, that there is a fair amount of Republicans and independents who get their news directly from Midas Touch and legal and political news from Legal AF. I know it for a fact. And so that's who we're talking to at these moments when we conclude our episodes, or when you and I get on what we like to joke around about being the rant, and the one we're on now. So that is what we are worried about. And it's not to scare the crap out of somebody to make sure they vote against Donald Trump. This is the reality. This is based on his own words and those of his advisors. The Stop the Steal was invented by Roger Stone 8 years ago. 10 years ago about another election. Okay. And they were always planning, if they lost, not to respect the will of the American people and to try to cling and to stay in power. When I was in DC recently, we took a bathroom break in the Willard Hotel. And it almost, when I realized I was walking into the Willard, which was the war room for Donald Trump and the overthrow of democracy, staffed by General Bannon, this war council, General Flynn, literally, Rudy Giuliani, and others, okay, Mark Meadows coming in and out in order to try to overthrow democracy. It just shows you that as much foresight as the founding fathers and the framers of our key government documents, right, which I went to Washington recently, sort of renew my faith in our democracy with my wife. And we see under glass in a hollow temple, we see our Constitution. We see our Declaration of Independence. And it's there for a reason, right? And with lots of people, not just from this country, but from other countries who were, I don't want to say worshiping at this altar, but they were there in reverence of these documents. And we have an obligation, a patriotic obligation, to implement what those things say, right, in our democracy. But the foresight that, as much as they had, the framers and the forefathers, and I said this to you guys, the brothers and others, when we were doing some text chains to prepare for our various shows, I said the forefathers and the framers did not anticipate the criminality of one of the two major parties in this country. They didn't anticipate. And that's why we see so much groaning and straining of our guardrails around our democracy that they did install by somebody like Donald Trump, because they did not anticipate a criminal president being restored to power, literally. A felonious president, a kleptomaniac, and a party that is also in their way criminal. They thought there'd be, there's things that scared the crap out of the framers and the founding fathers, like the masses, which is why we have the Electoral College. The public sort of scared the non-landed gentry, scared the crap out of them. But they did not anticipate that one of the parties, whether it was the Whig Party, the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, whatever it was called at the time, and they've sort of morphed over time, would be criminal. It started as the Tea Party movement, which we sort of saw as a weird fringe response, but now it has hijacked a major party in this country. And what we're watching, when we watch MAGA in Congress do nothing, talk about a new do-nothing Congress, do nothing for the 2 years they've been in power to help the American people at all. Not one job created by that Congress. Joe Biden created 16 million jobs while he's been in office, not that Congress. Not one infrastructure laid, not one thing done by this Congress at all, except where they had to finally approve Joe Biden's plans, right? And that is what we see when we have a criminal party. There's no other way to put it. I apologize to those people that grew up as Republicans and their party left them. And I know plenty of them that will be never Trumpers. And I tell them, be pro-democracy. That's enough. Vote for Joe Biden because he's the only adult in the room with the moral character and fiber to lead our great nation, standing on the shoulders of all these documents that we've just talked about. That's the reason you do it. You do it because you're a patriot, not because you're worried about, your party's got to win. Okay, regardless of who's heading your party. Vote for the right person to lead our great nation because you are a patriot. That's it. That's all I can say.
Well, I think powerful words to end this show on. I want to tell everyone one more time, now's the chance to go to patreon.com/legalaf, patreon.com/legalaf. Go check it out right now. Get those law school-like classes at patreon.com/legalaf. Legalaf. It's exactly what, it's very similar to how a Professor Popok law school class, or my law school class would be. So check that out. Also, store.MeidasTouch.com. Get the gear that was featured in the Trump criminal trial. I should say was an exhibit at the Trump criminal trial, thanks to Donald Trump's lawyers and their failure of a cross-examination of Michael Cohen, where they tried to act like our merch store was Michael Cohen's store. You can get that famous Mar-a-Lardo Correctional Facility t-shirt and other store.MeidasTouch.com. Want to tell everybody as well, if you can, hit subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let's get to 3 million subscribers by the end of this summer. We're close. We're 500,000 subs away. And the best way you can help out this platform, though, is just let others know about the Meidas Touch Network. Let others know about Legal AF. Share this show with friends, family members, coworkers, neighbors, anybody you know. It's important that we just keep getting knowledge out, the facts, the evidence, and it's a bipartisan way. Just let's get the facts out. Let's talk about real law and order here. Let's talk about the process, the system. Judge for yourself, but I just want to give you the facts and nothing but the facts. It's Legal AF. Have a great rest of the weekend, Michael Popok. Great seeing you. Shout out to the Meidas Mighty, and shout out to the Legal AFers.